launching. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar. We'll give it a couple more minutes as people join.
This is ours. Yeah, Chris. Let's see.
Hi, everyone. So yes, I want to address one of the questions that was dropped into the chat. So for today's webinar, as a attendee, people do not have the option to turn on their video or to speak. But what you can do is you can drop a question into the chat box or into the Q&A option. And you also have the ability to raise your hand if you want us to unmute you. Okay. So we'll go ahead and get ahead started today. So I'm going to turn it over to Crystal Langholtz.
Hi, everyone. As Denise from Oweesta mentioned, my name is Crystal Langholtz, and I am the Chief Operating Officer for the Oweesta Corporation. We're a national Native CDFI intermediary and get to work with the many Native community development financial institutions that support our Native communities. I am so very happy to welcome you to this webinar, long in the making, with our partner, the Federal Home Loan Bank, and also our other partner, the South Dakota Native Homeownership Coalition, who are our thought partners in helping us share this valuable resource. The purpose of our webinar today is to address and discuss a resource that's available to designed to support down payment assistance for Native families, and to learn more about that resource and how you can access it for your community, and to make sure that we all have that opportunity for the communities that we serve. We are so very excited to welcome members. This is a combined webinar. We're welcoming members from the Federal Home Loan Bank, the banks that are part of the Federal Home Loan Bank membership, as well as Native CDFIs and Native housing authorities and other partners and nonprofits that serve Native communities onto this call today. So we are going to have hopefully a wide variety of voices that all are interested in advancing these resource opportunities, and hopefully as well the opportunity to think about how we can fit in to support down payment assistance in Native communities. So with that, we would like to do a poll to get a sense of where you're from and to get a sense of what kind of institution you serve. So Denise, can you go ahead and launch that, please? So the two questions here are, what kind of institution do you represent? And as well as, have you ever offered a federal home loan bank product through partnership in your community? I'll give you just a few minutes to click. How are we doing on the voting, Denise? We're trickling in. Awesome. Great. So we can see the results here. We have some great representation across the whole spectrum here. It looks like we have 27% from our native CDFIs. Thank you so much for joining us. 27% from Tribal Department or Tribal Housing Authority, as well as some Native nonprofits, Federal Home Loan Bank members. Thank you especially for being on today. As well as other, including, I would guess that includes our many federal agencies and various partners as well that are engaged and supportive of this space. And it looks like the vast majority of us have not offered Federal Home Loan Bank products in partnership with their community. So that is great. You're in the right place. We are going to be talking about a lot of those resources today. Our native CDFIs have been creatively responding to the growing home ownership demand in Native communities. And so it's been really exciting to see Native CDFIs, our Native housing authorities, all really trying to work to increase the number of homeowners in their communities. And of course, one such great example of this is my dear friend Tani Brunch, who is the executive director of the Lakota Funds and is one of the great leaders of the South Dakota Native Homeownership Coalition. And she's going to talk a little bit about the NAHI resource that we're going to spend this our conversation about, and what it's like to be a grassroots partner to make sure that these resources are available in their community. So I'm gonna turn it over to Tani.
Great. Thank you, Crystal. Welcome everybody, and really happy to see so much interest in those of you who have joined today and wanting to learn more about the NAHI program. So I'm also happy to let you know that, or as you don't know, maybe that as a Federal Home Loan Bank Advisory Council member, I've had the opportunity to inform the bank about the importance of down payment assistance in Native communities, and probably share success stories and how Indian country is different than our non-Native communities. So as many of you on this call know, home ownership in our Native communities is extremely low, almost non-existent. Home ownership rates on South Dakota's reservations, for example, are about 33%, which is less than half of what it is statewide for South Dakota at 68%. And that we find to be pretty typical across the nation. It is less than half nationwide, just no matter who you look at, normally less than 50%. But why is that? And I think a lot of us working in Indian country know these reasons, but I think it's important to communicate not only Federal Home Loan Bank, but also to our member banks. Important to recognize the challenges, but also more than that, for those of you who know me, it's not about the barriers, it's about the solutions. And I think NAHI offers a good solution for many of those barriers. So probably first and foremost, our families across Indian country are of much lower income levels, right? So I know on Pine Ridge specifically, we're less than half the median average more than half of the population lives below the poverty line, which does homeownership isn't achievable. It means that we need to keep we need to be offering as many mortgage, we need to keep the mortgage payment affordable. So that means utilizing products like NAHI to reduce the mortgage amount. We have less assets in Indian country, and that's largely due to the trust land status. Unlike non-native communities that can offer the value of the land that the home rests on as collateral, we don't have that luxury in Indian country for the most part if we're dealing with trust land. So again, what is the solution? To reduce the loan amount to improve the loan to value, which can be done through this NAHI down payment assistance program. Mortgage lending is tricky on trust land. All of us know that, who are working in our Native communities to promote homeownership. So what's the solution there? You probably might already know this answer if you're familiar with what I usually am promoting, and that's find a Native CDFI. Find a Native CDFI or a TDHE, any Native nonprofit who's working in that community, because they are the experts. Not only do they help you navigate the process, but they know and utilize every resource to make the deal work, which includes NAHI. And then South Dakota Native Homeownership Coalition, one of the partners here, and a lot of the reason that we're identified the need for this kind of training. So South Dakota Native Homeownership Coalition is almost 7 years old, will be 7 years old in June. Did a good job, I think, at the beginning of identifying the barriers as well as others. There's a lot more barriers than just the land status and the low incomes and the need for subsidy. There's a lack of housing stock. Most of you are aware of that. We don't have realtors. We don't have, websites where you can go and find a home for sale. We don't have enough qualified work-ready workforce. There's a lack of lenders. And so that's where, like Crystal, I applaud the lenders that are on this call and appreciate you being interested in how to meet those needs in Indian country. And there's more need for down payment assistance, obviously, which is the primary reason we gathered this information together to learn more about NAHI. We've also identified but are working on the solutions to many of these barriers and created resources to help practitioners, TDHEs, tribal housing authorities, and of course our CDFIs to help the Native families achieve homeownership. So I'm going to finish with a plug to please check out the South Dakota Native Homeownership Coalition's website, and I will plug that into the chat. I also want to take this opportunity to thank Federal Home Loan Bank. Federal Home Loan Bank has been a strong partner of the coalitions since our beginning. They've joined us for our tribal site visits. They've participated in panel discussions and for joining and supporting our annual conference, serving on committees, just very strong, very enthusiastic partners, and just want to take this opportunity to say thank you, Federal Home Loan Bank. So now on to the training. And we'll go to the next slide with the agenda. This is what we've got together, put together for you today. Just an overview of the agenda. We'll start with a Federal Home Loan Bank Des Moines, just an overview, and then we'll get more into the meat of the topic here by learning more about the other grant products that Federal Home Loan Bank offers, that being the Affordable Housing Program, or AHP, Home Start. And then we're going to get down into the weeds of it, which I can't wait for, the Native American Homeownership Initiative, or NAHI. So we'll start with an overview and then go to member eligibility, the home buyer eligibility, how to enroll home buyers, reimbursing funds to members, and then detail around the documentation requirements. So with that, I believe I'm passing it on to Federal Home Loan Bank's Jennifer Ernst.
You are. Thank you, Tawny. And Thank you and Crystal and the Oweesta team for this warm introduction, and most of all, for the leadership that you provide in Native communities. I am Jennifer Ernst. I'm Community Investment Officer with the Federal Home Loan Bank of Des Moines, and I'm sorry that I don't have a video. I am on a bank-issued laptop, and our security is rather intense, and I was unable to get the video to work, so my apologies for that. I am joined today with members of the Federal Home Loan Bank team, including the folks who administer NAHI and who lead that, Melody Daw, Jessica Grant, and Chris Coons-Roberts. I also wanted to echo just a huge thanks to Kathy Papke with Dakota Bank, who is a Federal Home Loan Bank member and is joining us today. She's going to be talking about how to access these grant funds from the member's perspective. So a really wonderful perspective. So before we dive into the details of NAHI, let's go to the next slide and just do a very quick overview about the Federal Home Loan Banks. There are 11 of us in the country. We are cooperatives. We are owned by our members, and they are banks and thrifts and credit unions, insurance companies, and CDFIs. And all 11 banks, even though we kind of have that same name, Federal Home Loan Bank, we are independent. We are independently operated with different management teams, different boards of directors, and different advisory councils. And as Tawny mentioned, she's a member of our advisory council, the Federal Home Loan Bank of Des Moines. Our district is represented there in green. So we cover 13 states. Going all the way from, you can see kind of the eastern borders of Minnesota, Iowa, and Missouri, and that's the Mississippi River running down there, all the way out to Alaska, Hawaii, American Samoa, and Guam. Each year, the Federal Home Loan Banks make available 10% of our profits as grants for affordable housing, and NAHI is derived from that. So this is interesting, right? Because even though our name is Federal Home Loan Bank, these are not federal funds. These are privately generated funds. This is earned income through the business that the bank has with its members. And this is important to know because these grant funds can only be accessed in partnership with one of our member financial institutions. And there's a list of those financial institutions on our website. And again, these are banks, thrifts, credit unions, insurance companies, and CDFIs that are members of the Federal Home Loan Bank. And we get to have Kathy Papke from Dakota Bank, who is one of our members, talking about how her institution leverages these grant funds to support homeownership for first-time homebuyers, and particularly Native first-time homebuyers. So while all the banks, all the 11 Federal Home Loan Banks make available 10% of their profits for affordable housing, the Des Moines Bank has down payment assistance grants that are specifically available to Native households. And that product is called NAHI, and that is the focus of our webinar today. Let's go to the next slide, please. And so before we kind of dig into NAHI, though, as Tawny mentioned when she went through the agenda, we're going to just touch on very quickly the two other grant programs that the Federal Home Loan Bank of Des Moines offers. The first is the Affordable Housing Program, or AHP. And AHP, it's a competitive program. It provides grants that help finance either new construction or rehabilitation of rental or owner-occupied housing. So it's very, very flexible. And the way it works is that a housing organization, again, partners with a Federal Home Loan Bank member to apply for funds. And that partnership is going to be a key thing to understand, and it's going to be a theme that we kind of talk about throughout the webinar. In this photo, you see the Crow Tribal Housing Authority. They partnered with First Interstate Bank and received an AHP award that helped to build the Upsalaga Warrior Apartments. This is in Crow Agency, Montana, and these are rental units that are reserved for Native veterans. Let's go to the next slide, please. Because I also wanted to mention our Home Start program, which, like NAHI, provides down payment assistance. And the reason I mention Home Start is because should a situation arise when you apply for NAHI funds but find out that they've been exhausted, I encourage you to think about Home Start as another option. Home Start provides grants up to $7,500 each to first-time homebuyers with incomes at or below 80% of area median income. And Home Start can also be used to serve Native communities and Native households. It's just that, unlike NAHI, it's not exclusive to Native households. Okay, next slide, please. So we're going to cover, and we can go to the next slide too, please. We're going to cover some NAHI basics, and then Kathy's going to kind of talk to us from the member's perspective about, how this actually works when the rubber hits the road, right? So let's start with the who, what, where, when, and so on. So who is eligible for NAHI? Well, it is designed specifically for Native Americans, Native Alaskans, and Native Hawaiians with incomes at or below 80% of area median income. And later in the webinar, we're going to talk about the documentation requirements for Native status and income eligibility. NAHI is providing grants. These are down payment assistance grants in amounts up to $15,000 per household. It can be used, as I said, for the down payment assistance. It can be used to help with closing costs. It can also be used for necessary home repairs, so long as that rehab work is associated with the purchase of the home. So, said another way, NAHI grants are not available for existing homeowners to rehab their homes. If that's a need in your community, AHP would be a good resource for that. NAHI is down payment assistance or some rehab work associated with the purchase of the home that the Native household is going to live in. Okay, so then something else to know that we'll talk about the details of, which later in the presentation, is that there is a 5-year deed restriction that goes with the NAHI grant, and it basically says this: if the home buyer stays in the home for 5 years, they keep the full grant amount, which again can be up to $15,000. But if they sell, they pay back a pro rata portion for each year that they own the home. So a little more details to follow later in the webinar. Okay, so then let's talk about where. So remember that map of the US, and I said those green states were the Federal Home Loan Bank of Des Moines states, and they kind of started over there with Minnesota, Iowa, Missouri, and then headed west from there. The NAHI funds must stay in our district. So in other words, the home that's being purchased must be located in one of the Federal Home Loan Bank Des Moines' 13 states. And these funds are made available each year. The total allocation to NAHI and to Home Start is something that is advised to us by our advisory council, of which Tawny is a member and plays a hugely important role in educating us about the needs of our district and about Native needs in particular. So each year there's an annual allocation and an allocation strategy. And in 2020 and again in 2021, that allocation strategy is going to be that we will be releasing funds in equal amounts on a quarterly basis. So remember that I said Federal Home Loan Bank grants can only be accessed through one of our members. Well, so I'm sorry, I've moved down to the why section, which I think is pretty intuitive with the households, why NAHI is a benefit to the households. I mean, down payment assistance is just such an important component of promoting home ownership, but it's also important for our member banks. And so for the housing organizations who are on the call, who are working with households and would like to partner with a Federal Home Loan Bank member, this part of the presentation kind of helps you think about how you can connect with them and help them to recognize the opportunity that NAHI provides for their institution as well, which is that by providing this down payment assistance grant, it really helps the member close the loan for the home buyer. And it can also help them to reach new customers, to increase their mortgage lending, and it helps tell a story about their community profile and their community engagement. And again, Kathy's going to talk more about that. But before I turn it over to her, which I will do next, I would just close by saying that the way, the process for dispersing NAHI funds is that the member first closes the mortgage and kind of fronts the NAHI grant to the Native household, and then the Federal Home Loan Bank reimburses that member once all the documentation has been approved. So Kathy's going to talk about how that is a smooth process and what steps can be taken to make it a successful one. So Kathy, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I want to thank you for inviting me here. I've been working with the grants for the last 6 years, but Dakota Bank's been doing it for many years. And we also partnership with tribal lending and our rural development USDA office here in Aberdeen. So we do not only for our own Dakota Bank, but also for a couple other partners. And it works really well. If you want to switch to the next screen for me, it talks about the Federal Home Loan Bank's member eligibility. And this is very simple. If you wanted to become a member, you can get Des Moines Federal Home Loan Bank Des Moines agreement online. It's got to be the authorized individual that will sign the agreement, and you just upload it to Federal Home Loan Bank, and then they will approve it, get you set up on a user ID, password, etc. It's very, very simple, and it's free, quick, and easy to do. If we can move on to the next screen, we talk about the eligibility, and I know Jennifer talked a little bit about it. It does have to at least one adult member of the household has to be enrolled in a federally recognized tribe. And usually what you'll do then is we'll need a copy of your card, something that identifies that you belong to a tribe. Next, we will look at your income. And if anybody out there just wants to call to see if they're qualified, sometimes they'll call and just say, hey, can you look this up for us? But you can do that anytime with me. I have no problem helping anyone. But what we do is we go out and we look to see if the income, and it has to be household income. We'll look that up. We can use HUD or NAHASDA, and we can use the greater of the two. But it does have to be at the 80%. Next thing is we do need to have a signed purchase agreement. And so these are just items that you'll keep uploading to me. And then we have to have the home ownership ready. We need to have you complete an education class. And when you have that completed, then you can upload that to us. And usually it's, if both members are first-time homeowners, we usually have both of them are taking the class. Next screen, please. So these are the collected requirements, and usually, and I'll use tribal lending and USDA as an example. I created them a checklist so they know what we need, but I'll go over each one of these with you. Obviously, I said the documentation of your native status, and usually that's a card. Sometimes it's a certificate that they'll send me. And then the next one is your signed purchase agreement. And then there's a worksheet, a calculation income workbook. And we need all household income. So if there's a spouse that may not be working, we'll need to have them sign that certificate of zero income. But if we do have, let's say we have a situation where the husband is on the loan and maybe the wife isn't, or vice versa, but they are working, we still need to identify their income. Even though they may not necessarily be on the loan, we still need to get all household income verifications. And usually what that is a verification of employment. And if we go that route, or you can go another route, which we get 4 consecutive pay stubs. And then we put all that information into this calculation workbook, and there is a form that our borrowers need to sign. There's also a Federal Home Loan Bank Des Moines household questionnaire that you will need to fill out. It's very user friendly. You can online, you can just, it's just basically clicking the little dots and answering the questions. Then we do need your home buyer's education course certificate. And then if there is going to be any type of repairs, we would need a list of that. And usually what they'll send us is a list of the repairs and the cost bids and things like that. And number 7, this doesn't happen very often, but every once in a while, we will need a copy of the appraisal. And that's usually if it's an REO, or if the borrower is buying the home, say like from a mom, from a parent, a grandma. So that doesn't happen very often, but every once in a while we do have that case. And so then we will ask for a copy of the appraisal. After all that stuff is sent to me, then I turn around and I upload it to the Federal Home Loan Bank website. Does anyone have any questions on these forms? After we send those up, Federal Home Loan Bank will
Hey,
reserve.
Kathy.
Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, it's Melody. I've been sort of monitoring the chat because it's been a firestorm in the chat. And some of this is about what you just talked about. So I just wanted to address a couple of them, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
There was a question here about homebuyer education. The classes that are approved have to be offered by an entity who has adopted the national industry standards. That can be a HUD-approved counseling agency, but there's multiple online courses, frameworks, eHome, MGIC is a free course. So if you are on our website under affordable housing and the Home Start program or NAHI, we do have that resource listed directly on our website, and you can access some of that list. It's not comprehensive. In general, almost everyone qualifies. It should, for this course certificate, it should just be a pre-purchase course and have a certificate that can be issued and an approval date that it was issued so that we can tie that to the buyer and their name on it. And Tawny's jumping in. Great, thank you, Tawny. There was a couple other questions, so I just want to address it about our territory. So NAHI must be issued within our 13 state district, which was on that page. If you wanted to access Home Start to use for purchasing, that could be used outside of district. It's available anywhere in the US. However, you must be working with an FHLB member who lends in that area as well. And then the last question that popped up in here that I can see is our work in our program in Guam. That's a little more of a heavier topic because we don't have a specific program like this in Guam since we do lend in district. But if we had a member who was lending there, technically speaking, they could use Home Start there. So it would be pretty much these same factors, but taking out the native aspect.
Melanie, we also have a couple questions in the Q&A.
Okay.
Can either of these program funds be used in conjunction with a rural housing loan with USDA?
Yes.
Yes. All right.
And layered financing is permitted. So multiple layers can be used with this program. Our analysts have gotten pretty expert at sorting that out.
When can we start accessing these funds?
Your member would access that. So you would have to have a partnership with a member bank who would then be able to reserve funds on your behalf once you come to an agreement on how to do that.
And then so a couple more questions. Do we want to continue taking now or continue or towards the end of the presentation?
I think if we can move on and we can answer a few more questions because some of these might get answered through the presentation, if that works.
Yeah, great. So yeah, so everyone is asking great questions. I think what works best is if everyone drops it into the Q&A. That way we can start a queue and then we can just go down that queue when we get to that section. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll just keep going here. As long as we have all this documentation, we send it up to the Federal Home Loan Bank website. From there, I will get an email that will confirm if the reservation has been approved. And then I will pass it on to you. And we continue on with the process of your loan. If you want to go to the next screen, please. Now we're trying to get reimbursed for the funds. Your loan is closed. And usually what happens, both our lenders at Dakota Bank, Tribal Lending, and USDA, as they're getting their documents prepared for the closing, a lot of times they will send me a copy of the closing disclosure for me to look at, just to make sure that everything looks a-okay. And I am more than willing to help with that. Also the deed restriction. They always want me to eyeball that too. They just feel more comfortable having a second set of eyes. And again, I will do that for you. But to get the funds, once our loan is closed, this is what we will need to collect from you. We will need a copy of the closing disclosure. There is a certificate of borrower eligibility, which I will sign. So that will be something that I will actually be sending. It isn't something that you will have to get. The third one is a copy of the deed restriction. And the fourth one is a copy of the recorded warranty deed, or if it's on tribal land, the lease agreement. And then fifth, which we should already have, is the home buyer education certificate showing that you've completed your buyer education course. Now, if some of these items you don't have, we have 120 days to actually get it into there. So sometimes I don't have necessarily, sometimes it takes a little bit longer to get a copy of the recorded deed. I will send in the copy of one. Obviously, it won't get approved to have the funds dispersed until we actually show that it's been recorded. But you can send me a copy of those two pieces so that we can get it in. We still have 120 days from the closing that it will get approved from Federal Home Loan Bank. And I will upload those for you. And then again, Federal Home Loan Bank will look at it. If there's something that we're missing, they'll let me know. If it's approved, they'll send us a notification and let us know that it's approved. And then usually I get the funds then the following a day or two, depending on when I get the email. Otherwise, like I said, if there's something that we're missing, they will send me a request and ask for some clarification. Pretty smooth process. And most of the time it's just little things that we have to clarify. There might be a question of something on the closing disclosure, and usually we get it identified, and in no time we have the funds. Next screen, please. And I guess I'm done. Like I said, I am here if anyone has just questions. I don't know if my phone number was on under my name, but you are more than welcome to call Dakota Bank anytime if you do have questions. Like I said, I've been doing it for a while. I've attended some of the coalitions, so I enjoy doing this. It's near and dear to my heart, and it's really a great program, and I enjoy that seeing these families get this money to help them, like you said, to get either a lower payment, get their house dollar amounts down. But it's a great program, and I can't encourage anybody to, to give it a shot. And I am here for anybody that has any questions. I appreciate it. Thank you for letting me attend.
Great. Well, thank you, Kathy. We are going to dig into a little bit of detail here about some of these documentation requirements. Again, kind of keeping in mind wanting to get everybody information about how to make this work. Where does the rubber really hit the road? So let's go to the next slide, please. So we are talking about NAHI, and as we said, NAHI is specifically targeted to and available for Native households. So we need documentation that the home buyer is in fact a Native household. And we have three ways to go about doing that. We can get either the tribal enrollment card or certification, or verification of membership, or that they are a shareholder of an Alaskan village or regional corporation. And then the third option there is to have a certification from the Department of Hawaiian Homelands for a homestead lease. So when you think about the household and how you're going to demonstrate to Federal Home Loan Bank and to the member that that household is Native, you would want one of these pieces of documentation, depending on the household's unique circumstances. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. Okay, so we're on the next slide, we're going to talk about income eligibility and how we verify that. And there are two forms that are used and then one resource that's there to help. So that first form is the household questionnaire. And this is used for every member of the household 18 years or older. This form is capturing the details of who each person is in the household that's 18 years or older. Things like, are they a first-time home buyer? It helps identify if there are dependents, if marital status, current or past marital status, and custody, child support, that kind of stuff, all of which is going to be factored into calculating the household income. So then that second form is the income calculation workbook. And this workbook captures each household member's income on a separate worksheet, and then it aggregates all that income for the entire household. And again, this is used to make sure that the household collectively doesn't exceed 80% of the area median adjusted for family size. So both documents work together to make sure that we know the family size and what the complete picture is for that household income. And everybody's income, it can look really different depending on whether you're working seasonal pay and bonuses and tips and so on. So we have this income calculation guideline to provide direction about what kind of income should be included and what kind of income should be excluded. And again, Melody, whom you've met already, and her team are there to answer any questions you might have. Let's go to the next slide, please. So something that is important to know, right, is that the Federal Home Loan Bank of Des Moines is going to be calculating household income for NAHI differently than the member bank or credit union is going to calculate the household income for the mortgage. Now, that's something to really think about, right? And here's why. Federal Home Loan Bank is making sure that that household income does not exceed 80% of area median, because if it did, then the household would not be eligible for the NAHI grant. And so we're going to err on the side of including more income than the member might. The member is calculating income up to the point that that household qualifies for the mortgage. So you see there's that differential there. And these amounts may differ. And I just want to say up front that it's going to be the Federal Home Loan Bank's calculation that determines which income is used for eligibility. So the second, I think, good thing to know is if the CDFI or housing organization or member bank, whoever's working with the household, has an interpretation of those income calculation guidelines that is a little different than the Federal Home Loan Bank's interpretation of those guidelines, it's really going to be the Federal Home Loan Bank's interpretation that prevails. And again, just so you know where we're coming from, NAHI funds are limited, they are really important, the need is great, and we want to make sure that the NAHI grants are being provided to the Native households for whom they are intended. So that's what's motivating us. And Tani, I think you have some kind of helpful hints for folks, some things that they can be thinking about as they prepare to submit household income information. Go ahead, sorry.
Best practices, or i.e. what I've learned the hard way, is
sure.
I think that the household income part is probably the most important and potentially most time consuming piece of this to provide all the documentation and stuff. But it's mostly, and I just want to give a shout out to Mary Jo Vogel that I saw is on the call, because we got to know each other very well. Many hours on the phone describing what all needs to be done. And so know your family. And that's where Native CDFIs are very well positioned to do this, because chances are we might already know our families, but make sure they understand why you're going to ask them all these questions and gather this documentation. Many times we have more than just a husband and a wife or partners living in the home. A lot of times by choice, we have unchis, who have adult grandchildren, even kids and grandkids living in the household. So there's going to be other adults who, you're going to need to gather documentation from, that early, and or they submit the zero income worksheet or whatever that is, and it's super simple. It's just a matter of us knowing and starting early so that we can be thorough in gathering that. And then what I've done with the verification of income form even, or verification of employment, whichever it is, actually go to the payroll office and walk them through it is probably going to be your best bet for getting it done right the first time, or at least second time. And like I said, start early, because I think it was Melody or Kathy that said you have 120 days to submit or whatever. Don't wait that long. Do this household income part first. That way it saves you potentially having to go back and regather more current, pay stubs and BOEs and stuff too.
Great tips, Tawny. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, let's, pardon me, let's jump to the next slide, please. So member banks ask me all the time when I talk to them about NAHI and Home Start. They say, well, they might say, right, like I'd like to participate, but we don't portfolio our loans. That's okay. That is not a barrier. And so for, the Native CDFIs and the other housing groups on the call, when you talk to members about, trying to encourage them to partner with you to access these funds, be sure to let them know that they may portfolio the mortgage loan or they may sell it. Now, the member is doing the underwriting of the mortgage loan, but the Federal Home Loan Bank is going to just confirm that the rates, points, fees, and other charges are market rate or below, and that there are no signs of predatory lending. But we are not going to be underwriting the mortgage loan, doing the underwriting of the credit. That's something that the member does. Next slide, please. Okay, and so we're going to go to the next slide, and it's got a lot of stuff on it. And don't worry, I'm not going to read every single line to you. I'm just going to help you kind of get some takeaways from this. I talked earlier about there being this retention requirement that if the household stays in the home for 5 years, they keep the full amount of that $15,000 NAHI grant. And if they need to sell before then, they'll pay back a pro rata portion for each year they own the home. So if they've lived in the house for 4 years, they would pay back $3,000 from any net gain. And I'm making air quotes around net gain, because when the Federal Home Loan Bank calculates net gain, we're going to be accommodative to the home buyer. It is not our desire to recapture funds from them. It's our desire to make the grant and help that home buyer build equity and enjoy home ownership. So that is a lot of information, and we can go to the next slide, please. And I would just say here that, you guys have gotten a lot of really good kind of detailed information and high-level information, and I know there are a lot of questions, so you've met Melody already, but she and her team are here and happy to answer any questions you may have. And I think we can, Krista, and Denise, we can go to the Q&As now and start answering some questions.
And those of you who were, we got some good ones popping up. Feel free, of course, to keep adding those as we go along.
Did you want me to read through these, Denise, or were you going to read them and I can respond? How would you like to do that?
Let me go ahead and read them. We can do a Q&A, a live Q&A.
Okay.
I think you already answered this. When can we start accessing these funds? That was answered, correct?
Right. So that's just a connection with the member. So you really need to develop that access to the funds by partnering with an active member who can lend. We do fund every year. So right now we're closing out 2020. We have a couple more weeks of 2020 funds, and we're setting up our round for 2021. So each year we fund new funds. I would point out that members have caps in each of our HomeStart and our NAHI programs that allows them to access up to a certain amount per program based on the availability of the funds in the pool. So again, this is going to be a factor in what's available to you and what's already been obligated by the bank for their own business.
Okay, thank you. And if anybody has any follow-up questions, just keep adding them. Right, and we have, what are factors in determining up to 15,000?
It's yours, how you want to use it, or the member's restrictions. So I'll speak from a member perspective because that's obviously an agreement you're going to have to come to with a member on how they want to obligate these funds. The maximum grant amount is $15,000 and for NAHI, $7,500 for Home Start. So we have members who use a standard $2,500 per grant for Home Start because they want to get the most grants out as possible. We typically see people use the full $15,000 for NAHI because of the impact that's required. But again, if that determination is needs-based, how much do they really need? How much are you going to preserve? Or an artificial number that's an agreement with you and the member, that's how that's determined. It just cannot exceed $15,000.
Thank you. Can you use AHP funds for rehab if still under 5-year retention period?
So I'm not entirely sure what this question means. If it's project-based, I can't speak to that. The rehab.
Can I maybe
Sure.
on the AHP, so this is Jennifer again. So on the AHP, you would apply, so AHP is competitive, right? So what I think I'm understanding here is that you'd like to have some rehab funds for owner-occupied housing. You would want to put a project together. I don't think it would be very efficient, frankly, to apply for AHP to assist a single home buyer. I think you would want to put together a collection of home buyers and then partner with one of our members to compete for the grant. And then if the AHP is awarded, yes, those households would be subject, no, on the owner-occupied rehab, they would not be subject. Ooh,
Right.
let me do some digging and yeah. They would not be subject.
Then we have, for the FHLB representatives, can a bank be a member of more than one FHLB?
I actually have no idea about this, Jennifer. You?
Well, it gets really super technical. So banks can have more than one banking charter, and that may make it possible for, say, like Wells Fargo, that has such a big footprint, to have a membership in more than one Federal Home Loan Bank.
Okay.
It's unusual. It's unusual.
Does the mortgage loan have to be with a member bank in order to receive NAHI?
So the answer is yes, but. So yeah, sorry, the answer is no, but you can use the mortgage with pretty much any first mortgage entity who can offer it, as long as it meets these guidelines we talked about, being non-predatory. But again, this is a point of negotiation with the member bank, whether they're just going to go through the effort of passing through the grant funds without retaining business. It is up to them to decide how they want to partner in that way. So we see it both ways. It's common for us to see a member bank passing a grant through and not offering the first mortgage. I know Dakota Bank does this, at times. And as you know, if you're working under, as most of you may know, but if you're working with a USDA 502 direct loan, that's not going to go through a bank. That's going directly through USDA. So the grant really becomes that relationship again that you're establishing in your agreement, how the grant will be used and how the bank will be participating, whether they have a mortgage or whether they're simply facilitating the grant pass through.
Great. And Angie, glad you're on. You could be doing this training, by the way, I think with what you know about HP probably, but I just wanted to clarify by using an example. Oweesta has been using NAHI for many years through our partner member bank, First National Bank in Rapid City. Mm-hmm. And so Oweesta is obviously doing the loan, doing the mortgage loan, and then applying for NAHI for up to $15,000. And First National Bank does do $15,000 for their families there. So that's a perfect model, I think, is the native CDFI doing the mortgage, and then applying for the NAHI to reduce the payment amount through the member bank.
Yeah, thank you both. So I do think the next question was a very specific follow-up question. I don't remember it at what point it was asked, but what is the website? So I'm not so sure what that is for. This was asked, oh, does anybody recall?
Yeah, I don't think we have. Did we not have it in the procedure, in the documents? We didn't supply it, right? For some reason. That would make sense. So our main website is FHLBDM.com, and we can provide this full connection for you. And all of these items, AHP as well as Homestart and NAHI, are going to be found under the affordable housing heading, very near the bottom of the page. So once you get into that section, you can really just feel free to investigate and explore, but we would be happy to help you navigate. But there's a lot in there that really touches on these guidelines, touches on all of our programs, how to use our system, how to use the resources we have available. So it's a good place to start research if you're interested, or to save those resource information for your use.
Can a TDHE access AHP to develop a project on the front end, and can the home buyer then access NAHI on the purchase of a unit from that same project? Essentially, AHP and NAHI would be touching the same unit in the project.
No, and there's no double dipping when it comes to these funds that are used. So it's one or the other. If you develop a project where you can show that there was no funds from that grant application that was tied to that unit specifically, then you could do it. Because we do see some projects that get developed that are a fewer market rate, some are affordable. That's very rare. So you would have to be able to show that there was no crossover and no double dipping on those funds.
Mm-hmm. Then we have, what mortgage loan program can this be used in connection with? FHA, USDA Rural Development, Section 184, VA conventional.
Yes, all of them. Any first mortgage program, as well as a portfolio product. So if there's members on the line who are offering portfolio products, who, we see a lot of that in our Midwest, Iowa and Missouri. They have their own product because those home prices are so much lower that they're not going to fall in these categories. They have some different criteria. So any of these programs are eligible, as well as a portfolio product, as long as it meets those HOEPA guidelines. You issue CDs, because we do test on APR and CDs, and that it doesn't violate any predatory lending laws, that kind of thing. It must stay within the bounds of fair lending.
I just want to include for sure too that the VA loan products include the Native American direct loan specifically, which is the only VA loan offered to tribal members on trust land. It does work with that too.
Thank you, Tommy.
What about those that don't have pay stubs, i.e. self-employed?
Tax returns. So we collect 2 years of tax returns and then a year-to-date profit and loss when we get past June in the current year. So at this point, we'd be collecting the last 2 years tax returns, 2018, 2019, and a year-to-date profit and loss. We do require filed taxes outside of, I will be clear, outside of a pandemic in which taxes kind of got impacted this year, but we do require a filed tax return after April per program guidelines.
I'm working with a real estate broker who said there's no native home buying financing in Arizona. Is this true?
I don't know. Not from our bank, because that's not within our territory. We don't offer NAHI there, but I couldn't speak to other programs.
Okay, so this, so how would we be able to assist people who are over or under the 80% income guidelines? Not sure how to ask this question. So if we have people who are attempting to take care of their credit and getting ready to buy their first home, and they are over the 80%, is there other assistance that we can offer them too? For example, they are employed and receive other income such as child support or some other incoming monthly income.
So within our program, no. You must be below 80% to be able to participate, and that's total household income. So to keep in mind, one of the things that we talked about is who's in your house, and Tawny did a really touched on this, and we see this a lot, that gets a little complicated. We see a lot of blended households. We see second marriages with blended households with children. We see multi-generational families and siblings all within the same house. So vetting out that information, all of that income is impactful, and we collect all of that. So if a household is over 80%, we don't have a resource that would allow them to access those funds. I do know, so I'm in Washington State, I'm out of our Seattle office, and so a good example of this would be in Washington. The Washington State Housing Finance Commission does provide financing for over 80% and down payment assistance. Obviously, it's not grant money, and it's not, grant money tends to be reserved for under 80% or deferred funding, but I would say explore your other options. Internally, ours is restricted, it's a federal regulation, to 80% and below, so we don't have a different pathway for individuals who exceed that limit.
And Melody, this is Jennifer. Could you talk about the income standards that are used to evaluate 80% AMI?
Yeah, so essentially for us, and I just want to clarify, I think Tani kind of touched on it, but I want to make sure there's no there's nothing misconstrued about the timeline. Typically, when we see someone submit, we're looking for what the current salary is, the current earnings, pay stubs, VOE at the time of submission. We're going to look for the most recent information. Some instances in some positions, maybe somebody gets paid monthly. So we're going to look for the most recent pay stub, which could be 30 days old, but that's not our goal. We're looking for what's happening right now in the household, and say someone is receiving child support, but it's inconsistent. They're maybe ordered to get $400 a month, but they get really more like $200. We're going to ask for a pay history. So we're going to evaluate what they're actually receiving. So we wouldn't be using just the statement figure, we'd be using what is actually coming in. While Jennifer did speak on our numbers are going to be different from the first mortgage lenders, and they are, sometimes we don't calculate as high as someone else might, because we can exclude things like a one-time bonus that may put a household over if we can show that it's not going to continue, or someone earned a lot of overtime, but now they've moved on to a completely different position that doesn't permit it. So I think it's worth the conversation. If you have someone who you think is close, we would be really happy to discuss that with you and kind of how to calculate and really play. If you want to get online, if you're working with a member, we have our workbook online. That's accessible. None of this is hidden information. You can see our household questionnaire. You can see our income calculation workbook. Instructions are there. So if you want to start to kind of play with that and see if someone might qualify, we'd be happy to talk you through it, but that's a really good place to start to see how your household measures up when we look at this income threshold. And we do count all sources of income once we're aware of it. So to be clear, even if someone's running a cash-based in-home daycare and they're not filing it, if we can see or we discover that there is cash coming in that way, that is something that's calculated. But if that same person can show that they no longer run that business, they're working full time, then we can talk about something different. So full disclosure and early conversations really help us help you so that we can make sure we're making the best decisions and best recommendations for your buyers.
Yeah, thank you.
And we will be evaluating against either HUD or NAHUD, right?
Sorry, yeah.
So there could be some flexibility. So if the household does, is over the HUD income standard, but within the HOSDA's income standard, they would still be eligible for NAHI.
And we look at all three for NAHI. When our analysts receive a submission, we actually test to see which is higher and ask the member to adjust. So even if our calculation goes higher, if you're not using the higher limit, we're going to say, hey, help yourself out. Always look for your highest limit, because we want to make sure that your buyers can qualify. So NAHI does have the benefit of having 3 potential income limits: HUD county, HUD state, or NAHASDA. So you're always going to look for that highest limit for your household size.
Next question. I am working with an elderly family who had a loan that is coming due in 3 months. It was a 5-year loan, amortized at 25 years, with final payment due now. Would they be eligible for a down payment assistance payment if the lender agrees to refinance?
So we're acquisition only. We don't do refinance work. So that is not something. DP has to come in, down payment has to come in at the time of acquisition. We do work with construction to perm financing. So say a USDA construction loan that was self-help and is converting to permanent financing once the home is complete. that would be considered a refinance because they're tipping from that construction loan to permanent financing. But in any other instance, it is acquisition only. So they would not be eligible. If you currently own a home, they would not be a first-time home buyer. So we would not be able to fund their refinance nor purchase.
If we send in our agreement to a FHLB, what are the next steps for participating in this program?
Lisa, I'm not sure if you're a member. Members are the only ones who can submit an agreement that they're eligible to participate. So members would submit their agreement to FHLB, and it's very simple. They send it, we verify that someone's authorized to sign that agreement, set them up in our system. They register users at the member level, and then we can walk them through a training, talk about the program, and they can make reservations. It's we provide a lot of hand-holding in those first few files because it is a bit of a foreign body for them. But it's a very simple process to jump into. The understanding is like everything else in mortgage, practice makes perfect. You get a little more time under your belt and a little more practice, and you can really sort of perfect that.
Does the Topeka Bank offer this assistance for tribes in Oklahoma?
So this is Jennifer.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I think I can answer this one. So all the federal home loan banks offer some kind of down payment assistance generally, and that down payment assistance would be available to tribes all across the country. What's different about the Des Moines Bank is that we have this NAHI grant, which is specific to Native communities. So I'm not certain if Topeka has a down payment assistance specific to Native communities. I'd have to check their website, but I wouldn't want anyone to be discouraged by that because all the federal home loan banks do offer some kind of down payment assistance.
How do we access a list of members in our area?
So if you go onto that affordable housing section of our website, on the right-hand side, we have a list of our, I'm scrolling down, sorry, our AHP members, housing sponsors and institutions, and then member directory of who participates within our programs. And that's, it's up to date, it's current. We are constantly adding and issuing new updates as we get mergers or get new members that come onto the program. But if you have any questions, again, you could reach out to our office and we'd be happy to help you determine if there's a potential partner in your area.
Melody, if you have it available at the moment, could you drop the link into the chat so people can start looking at it? And we can also reshare the link after the webinar.
Sure. Actually, I'm gonna, Jessica, can you share that? Can you pull that down and share that into the chat? Both of our analysts are on the call, so they're. I'm actually kind of locked into Zoom right now because of my system, so it's a little challenging.
Thank you. We have an AHP award for home buyer rehab. If homeowner received NAHI, can they apply for homeowner rehab if the NAHI 5-year retention is still in place?
I believe it's the same for AHP, that there's no double dipping, but Jennifer, can you speak to that?
Yeah, you're correct. No double dipping.
And then we just have a shout out. Thank you, Tani. If I'm correct, I heard that these programs can only assist in their current regions. So can someone in Colorado or New York or New Mexico tribes use any of these programs?
They can be in the tribe that is based out of Colorado or New Mexico, but the home purchase must be within our district to use NAHI. Other banks have different restrictions, and as Jennifer said, there may be nothing that's specific to Native tribes, so it would be their down payment programs.
Do you have a list of lenders that offer Section 184 Native loans?
I don't believe we do, that we maintain that. Perhaps there's someone else on the call who could assist.
We don't have it on our website, I don't think, but I know somebody who could tell us. So we just need to, we can follow up on that one.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, and then final question, how can we facilitate this program as a tribal housing entity?
I would say what I've discovered is a lot of conversation with members and trying to figure out how it best fits into the communities that you serve and potential buyers or projects that you have coming up, how that can work. As I said, there is member caps, so it's just important to be sort of long range thinking. Maybe you're not going to be able to access a full NAHI cap through a member this year, or maybe there's multiple members who want to participate with the groups that you work through. I think taking nothing off the table, being willing to work with multiple members, and then see if there isn't some relationships that could be formed or gain some experience from other active users to be able to provide that resource. Having a training, even with our team, to talk about how this program is facilitated and how you might use it might be a good way to get started.
So those are all
this is Jennifer.
Go ahead.
Sorry, this is Jennifer. So, you know, I think this question kind of gets to the heart of the partnership theme, right? So if you're a tribal housing entity and you know you're going to be partnering with a Federal Home Loan Bank member to access the funds, reach out to them, talk to them about the product, talk to them about your pipeline, about what kind of expected demand you think you have, about, you can even talk to them more generally about a banking relationship that you'd like to establish with them. So just, it's about building relationships. And I think giving that member some advance notice whenever possible of how you would like to work with them.
We have one other question. For reference, how many Native families were assisted through NAHI in 2019?
I am pinging Jessica right now because I'm not in my database. I can't get there to see if she can access it. I will be clear. We don't have a lot of members who use the NAHI program. So, and a lot of it cycles in and out. As you're aware, I'm preaching to the choir here that it can be very challenging for some Native families to actually get all the way through the homeownership process. You know, they're under contract, things change for them financially. So we do see a lot of reservations come in and then something prevents it, the fund cycle in and out. So it's not nearly as many as we would like to be able to see this program. This year it's been a very popular year for NAHI. We're super excited. We are very close to being out of funds for the year, and that has been a real benefit for us. Dakota Bank, I think in 2019 was the only member that met cap for the program with Native, and that's $100,000 worth of Native funds and $100,000 worth of Home Start. They're the only member bank participating who actually met that cap. So I'm hoping Jennifer has numbers for me, but I know I'm putting her on, I mean, Jessica has numbers for me, but I'm putting her on the spot too. I can come back with that figure. I'm sorry, I don't have that at my fingertips right now.
In the meantime, I did want to say I did put in the list of Section 184 guaranteed lenders off the HUD website for you all as well.
Thank you, Crystal.
So those are all the questions we have so far. You know, attendees, if you have any more questions, please keep them adding them to the chat box. We also have a raise your hand feature in the chat. So if you would rather verbally share your question, you can go ahead and raise your hand and I can unmute you.
And this is Jennifer again. Maybe while we're waiting for some more questions to come in, you know, I would just note that the Des Moines Bank District, as large as it is, it covers 40% of the U.S. landmass. And, you know, granted, Alaska is one of our states, and it's kind of inflating that number. But still, it's a pretty big district. And within our district, that represents about 30% of the Native population in the country. So with leaders like Tawny and others who have been members of our advisory council, and Elsie Meeks, who's a member of our board of directors, they've really helped us understand what the needs are in the district and with Native communities in particular. and develop these products that are responsive to those needs. We've talked a lot about NAHI, and I touched on AHP. I'd also encourage you all to take a look at that on our website. And of course, I'm available to answer any questions you might have. I said that AHP is competitive, and it does give priority points to Native projects as well.
So Jessica came through for the win. We had 31 approved disbursements in 2019 NAHI. What that means is that it got all the way through closing, and then the grant was actually funded because reservations are a different stage than disbursement. So we had 31 total in 2019. There might be a couple out there that are still waiting to be funded. Often it takes a little bit to get deeds recorded and to get them back for us to clear that. But that is the total we have on the books right now.
Thank you, Jessica and Melody. We do have a couple more questions. Is NAHI only for on-tribal communities, or can these funds be used in urban or off-tribe communities?
I think that question is saying, does it have to be on tribal land? And it does not. It just needs to be in our district. So it can be on tribal land or fee simple.
We are having a home buyers huddle tonight. I would like to share this information about these programs. How can I get access to a handout to get to our clients?
Well, we do have a few marketing tools, but we're probably about the program. They can give this information, but if a home buyer contacts us, we're going to redirect them to a member because we're not able to take an application. We can tell them what they can do, and we can let them know who has access to these funds in their area. We do have a couple of marketing flyers that we could share that's about this program. And again, all the information on the website. So I'm not sure how we want to distribute that if we share that link on, that PDF link on.
You know, honestly, I think the best thing to do is for everybody to just pull out their phones and, you know, look us up online and navigate our website.
We can send those attachments. I was just gonna say we can make sure that we send those attachments when we send out the PowerPoint and everything. Might not help you with your class tonight, Diana, but we should be able to get that out to you soon in the follow-up package for you all.
Right. And if you have capacity and want to log into our website during your huddle tonight to share what that looks like, this might be a good way to facilitate that initially.
Diana was adding that she is in Southwest Washington State.
Okay. I'm just outside Seattle, so hi, Washingtonians. Got a little break in the rain on our side today. Yeah, I think, again, probably our website would be the best way to do this. Our flyers are going to be pretty general. Basically, our flyers are going to say what we just sort of touched on, but with less information, and then to redirect you to our website and to contact a local member to access it.
Yeah, well, thank you everyone for joining. Yeah, if you have any final questions, please add them. But I just want to reiterate something that Crystal mentioned. After this webinar, we will be sending out a link to the recording and other materials. So, I made note of the materials that were requested during the Q&A portion. And so we're going to go ahead and send that out to everyone. So please be on the lookout. And if you have any follow-up questions, like on the slide that has been up there's the contact information for Melody. So please reach out to her, reach out to the Oweesta team or any of the other panelists that have joined us today.
Thank you so much. And I just want to add, it is best to email me. I will do my best to pick up the phone, but the whole world is blowing up right now as we near the end of the year. So I respond 12 times faster if I don't have to pick up the phone because there's a lot of time that's involved there. But please feel free to shoot me questions. I am going to be out of the office next week, but I can provide you contact information for our analysts as well, and they can answer any questions you have. They are the resident experts and who our members work directly with for every single file.
We did get one more question. Can the AHPUs. I'm not so sure how to read this one, but it's NAHASDA, income limits as well.
For AHP projects, I don't know. I guess if it's native, can they use Nahasda? I've never done that, so.
I think we did on mine, on Eagle Nest Housing.
Okay, I would think they could, but I don't work in AHP, so I don't want to give you bad information.
Well, I just want to thank everyone. I also want to make sure to let you know that this is kind of the first of a series of webinars that we're going to have with Federal Home Loan Bank about their various awesome resources that are available. Really trying to make sure that you know, we can get in there and access those resources on behalf of our Native communities. So look for more for us upcoming this year to sort of share out as we kind of plan some different conversations, including we'll have a conversation for our Native CDFIs about how you become members and more on AHP and some other kinds of resources. So thank you very much. We appreciated so much all your time. Thank you to Federal Home Loan Bank, and thank you to Tani and the rest of the South Dakota Native Homeownership Coalition, who I recognize many of your names. You had great representation from the Dakota. So that's awesome. And thank you to Kathy. All the,
hey, Crystal.
yes.
Sorry, I just wanted to add before you jumped off. My boss is lurking in here, so he just waited and said, yes, AHP does use the Nahasda limit, so he's checking us.
That's awesome. That's great. But the whole, yes, and thank you to all of the Federal Home Loan Bank. You have your whole team on today. That's so cool. Really great. So yes. And any other last thoughts from our other panelists before we head out?
This is Jennifer. I would just double down on all the thank yous to the Oweesta team, to Tani, to Kathy Papke with Dakota Bank, who has just been so generous about kind of sharing her trade secrets and, you know, exposing how easy this really is for our members. So, and to everybody who participates today, we're all busy. We're trying to wrap up the end of the year. Thank you for taking time from your schedules to participate.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you all.
That's it. How about Merry Christmas? Happy holidays.
Yes.
Got that,
Happy New Year. Bye, all.
Bye, everyone.